Good day, friends. My name is Luke Beer. I'm the president of this wonderful club, the Rotary Club of DuPont Circle. Brings me great pleasure to have a wonderful speaker here today, and I'd like my friend Austin to introduce him. Thank you, Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. This is someone that I deeply admire and am inspired by. I'm so happy that he's able to speak with us tonight. I've known Pej for, I guess, about 5 years now, having worked with him professionally and seeing all of the lives that he's changed and saved and families saved that are struggling with addiction. Pej is an Iranian man born in Germany and raised in the United States from the age of 5. Growing up, Pej always felt different due to his skin color and nationality. Pej was bullied as a youngster and encountered a lot of verbal, physical, and mental abuse within his home. Pej experimented with alcohol as far back as being 6 or 7 years old, but experienced his first blackout at the age of 12. When Pej was 17, he was hungover one morning driving his friends to school and had a majorly fatal car accident causing the death of a young teenage boy riding his bicycle to school. Pej went off the deep end and drowned in his own guilt, shame, and sadness with drugs and alcohol. Pej was later incarcerated as a juvenile and spent some time in a psych portion of the facility where he was deemed as a danger to his own life. After he was released, he became worse than ever and could not process his parents' divorce. Pej's young adulthood lifestyle consisted of drug dealing and excessive drug using. The party life was the only thing he knew. Through his artistic abilities, he created company funneled by drug money, but destroyed his business due to his own addiction. By the age of 35, Pej had experienced many jails, institutions, and near-death experiences, as well as homelessness. Pej finally threw up the white flag and asked for help. Thus, the recovery process started and began his only way that he knows of life. He's now, I believe, 15 years sober, and I am deeply inspired by this guy every single day. Pej, thank you so much for joining us tonight and speaking with us.
Well, thank you for having me. What an honor and a privilege to be asked to come and speak in the Rotary Club. Actually, a lot of that back east talk that you guys spoke of, I spent a lot of time in DC. I have family out in Montgomery County in Maryland, so I'm out there a lot. Virginia as well. Love the DMV. So I put together this PowerPoint, and I haven't done one of these in years. So let me share my screen real quick. Actually, a lot of what Austin just read to you, it's called the Keys to Recovery. So let me. Can you guys all see that as a full screen? Okay, good. So the key to recovery. I mean, what is the key to recovery? Recovery from what? Well, in my world, recovery from substance abuse, from alcoholism, and from mental health. And I'll get more into that and why I specialize in helping people with these types of disorders. This was me at the age of, I would say, probably about 21 years old now. I think I was having a really good time, but even during this time, my life wasn't really working for me. Being a foreign Iranian guy that was born in Germany and raised in Utah, I always felt uncomfortable in my skin. As was mentioned, that I experienced a lot of bullying. There was a select few people in Salt Lake City, Utah, where we first landed at the age of 5. That during that time there was a hostage crisis between Iran and America, and some American hostages were taken in Iran, and I was suffering the repercussions for that by a select few people that were bullies, right? So they would definitely let me know about it. I felt different. I always felt different. I felt uncomfortable in my skin. I was always comparing my insides to other people's outsides and losing every time. I started, taking little shots of cognac and beer. My dad would give me little sips here and there, but my first time ever using drugs was to get a total head change was at the age of 12. I started huffing gas, and this isn't something normal that kids do, but I know in health class we heard about sniffing glue, and so I took it to the next level and started huffing gas, and it would give me these out-of-body experiences where I experienced a lot of pattern like feelings and kind of went to the other side. Now, I remember when I got into alcohol and weed, that also was sort of a taboo in Salt Lake City, Utah, especially amongst the Mormons. But you know, I got my hands on it. I started doing it, and it became a way of life. And we ended up moving out to California when I was 15. My dreams had come true because we'd been to California a lot on vacation, but now we actually got to live out this way. And I remember, I was 15 going on 16. It was the high school era. It was like the golden years. And I started to hang out with people and go to high school parties and all that. I'd gotten a driver's license a year later when I was 17, and I was driving to school in the morning, stone cold sober, had piled all my friends into my car. We were on our way to school. It had rained the night before, so the streets were wet. And out of nowhere, a 14-year-old kid on his bicycle got right in front of my car, and I couldn't hit the brakes fast enough. And I accidentally hit him, and he went over the hood of my car into the windshield, and the car crashed into a minivan, and this kid's body was flung over the top of the minivan head first into the ground. So my whole life just went into slow motion. I got out, I saw the wreckage, I saw my friends in the car with blood trickling down their faces. I went and looked around the side of the minivan and saw this kid laying face down with blood gushing out the top of his head. So this just became, ultimately the most traumatic experience that I'd ever encountered throughout my life. And it made it more an excuse for me to use and drink. And so I did in excess. And then I got into a lot of trouble and found my way into the juvenile detention system. And, life went on like that for a long time. My parents went through a divorce that really messed with me a lot throughout my young adulthood. This was the 90s. At this point, we didn't have, friends that were overdosing on fentanyl. During this time, we were going to raves and we were partying, and there was a lot of night clubbing and things like that. Using and drinking was essential. I started selling a lot of drugs. I also started a business, as was mentioned before. It was a clothing line, which later on took form in the like of being both a surfboard, skateboard, snowboard line, and we were selling everything on a national level. But unfortunately, because I had no business sense, I tanked that business after about 4 or 5 years. And all of the money was indeed invested from drug sales. It was funneled into this business. And therefore, by the time of the age of 30, I found my way back into the system. I was locked up yet one more time. And for the next 5 years, I would get myself into a lot of trouble, a lot of accidents, a lot of car accidents. This is the same person that hit somebody behind the wheel years before who had passed away. And now it was a complete danger on the road. By the time I was 35 years old, I had lost the trust of my family. My mother, she wasn't talking to me anymore. I couldn't survive in the world. I didn't know how to do anything anymore. I had become my best customer as a drug dealer. And so basically I was just cracked out, aimlessly walking the streets or trying to just get by. And homelessness didn't even necessarily make me completely want to quit the lifestyle. It was just this soul sickness that was within myself. And so at that time, I sought help. And luckily, my mother at the time, when I called her, was educated and was armed with facts about her recovery process and what she needed to do for herself, because it is a family dynamic. And she did the right work and said the right things to where I actually decided to, follow suit and go and look for help. So here I wrote, when I was absolutely licked, I entered treatment. Now, I wasn't necessarily licked on the day that I walked in, but the type of place that I walked into was no nonsense. It was a recovery home that acted as a treatment center. It wasn't licensed yet, but the man that ran the place I had met 5 years before when I wasn't ready to get sober, and he was a straight shooter. He was educated. He was sort of like Yoda. Like he would sit and he would just wisdom would just flow out of this guy's mouth. And when I actually got out of my own way, and me and him, we had some ego battles, but after I got out of my own way, I would sit with this man and he would teach and he would talk recovery. And he had a psychologist that would come in. I would do individual therapy with the psychologist. which was needed. You know, I did some family therapy, I did some individual therapy. So I got to get that taste of how treatment worked. And then I was also encouraged by the guy who ran the place. His name was Siamak Afshar. He would go on to tell me, Pej, you need to go to school, you need to become educated, you should help people. You do really good in these in group therapy, except for you have no mercy. You go straight for the throat. You need to learn how to have you know, compassion for people and, you know, empathy. And I didn't even know what empathy meant. So, but I took his lead and I went back to school and finished top of my class, a person that was not good educationally growing up at all because I was always under the influence. Now I went and finished top of my class, got on the dean's list and took it to the next level, started working in the field of addiction. I started to learn too, that there's a difference between sobriety and recovery. My mentors, you know, my spiritual giants taught me it's one thing to come and get sober and be completely abstinent from drugs and alcohol, but it's another thing when you're actually living a life as a man or woman of recovery. And that takes a lot of work. And they say a daily reprieve contingent on my spiritual maintenance. So on a daily basis, I have to really tap into spirit and go out in the world and be of maximum usefulness to God and his fellows. And so I learned to embrace my recovery mainly because of the types of people that were, you know, my mentors and the ones that came before me and showed me the ropes. So I went to school and studied, finished, began to work in adolescent treatment and later in adult treatment. Now, when I was working in an adolescent facility, the place was called Newport Academy. They are now huge, they're nationwide. At the time, it was 2 houses, a men's house and a women's house. Young people under the age of 18. I got to experience meeting youngsters that reminded me a lot of myself. They were like little mini Peges reincarnated. And, you know, there was a lot of power struggles. And I was taught there not to get in power struggles, to actually meet people where they're at and understand that these are youngsters that are just like you were at one time. They're sick and they need help. I didn't know that, and this is probably 2010. I didn't even know that smoking pills was a thing, at least opiates. And I was meeting youngsters that were coming in addicted to smoking pills that they were finding in their parents' medicine cabinets or their grandparents' medicine cabinets. And I was kind of getting educated just like working in this type of environment. And I loved working there so much until the Department of Justice came and plucked me out and said that you have past charges for sales of methamphetamine, therefore you cannot work with adolescents. So then I had to fight this case against the Department of Justice, or not fight it, but like try to prove myself. And so I got all of the people in the community, as well as my psychologist and my counselor and all these different people to come sit in a courtroom with me. And finally, I was granted a probationary period to go back and work in adolescent treatment. But in that time, I went to go work in adult treatment, which I got to work with adults that acted like adolescents, right? So that was a lot of fun. And it just became something that I carried on with doing. I loved working with the teens, but I love working in addiction treatment. I love working with people that have alcoholism. And one of my greatest specialties is working with people that suffer from all various different types of mental health. And then after working as a case manager and a program director and a program manager, and later on in admissions in various treatment centers, I wanted to take it to the next level. Now I met a man, his name was Earl Hightower. He was in Los Angeles. He's a world-renowned interventionist. He's helped many people. He's been doing it for over 30 some odd years. And when I met him, he became one of my greatest teachers. I also met another man named Mark Leader, who taught me how to be a life coach and a sober coach. So I was simultaneously being taught by 2 of the greats in that area during that time. And Earl would often tell me, Pej, you have great skills, great talking skills. You should really take this to the next level rather than just working in treatment. You might want to think about becoming an interventionist. I said, I already do some interventions, but not professionally. So he took me under his wing. I started working for Hightower Associates, and Earl and I have worked hand in hand, side by side, shoulder to shoulder for years. Why am I an interventionist? You know, early on, when Siamak or Earl would take me sort of like a ride along to people's houses, I would see these family systems that some of them reminded me of my own, and some of them were a lot worse, and some not so bad. But I realized I would see them, the way that they would either call us or we would go into their homes. I'd see the looks on their faces and what they were going through. And I knew right then that I must have put my mom through a lot when I see other people suffering like this too. They look helpless and hopeless. They don't know what to do with their loved one. And you would walk into all these different scenarios and you'd see a kid that's shacked up in his bedroom doing fentanyl, or another kid that's in full-blown psychosis that nobody seems to be able to get through to, or, you know, many different various situations. And I thought, how can we help each one of these people individually? And that's where the art of intervention came through. And, you know, I think it all just, there was like this divine time in my sobriety where I was not only being taught by the greats, but God was placing certain scenarios into my life where I got to actually go out and take action in these. And so that's why I just fell in love with being an interventionist right away. I know there's a lot of people that would tell me, they'd say, Pej, I don't know how you do it, because I wouldn't be able to do it. And I tell them, you know, I don't think interventions are for everyone. Then again, sobriety is not for everybody either, but I'll do my damn best to be able to try to help people. And, you know, some of the things that I do rather outside of just interventions is case management. If I do work with a family, I'll do a lot of family coaching. And then if we help their loved one, whether we help them or not get into treatment, we continue to coach the family. And then also case management with the client. So sometimes we might have to manage the case up until the actual intervention, because the client is just not even in a contemplative state. You know, they're totally in another planet, and we have to try to get them, you know, build some trust, build some rapport until we can get them to that place. But once we, you know, one of the reasons I do this, the miracles that I get to see as a result of working in this field, I get to see people completely transform their lives and become the people that they were meant to be, rather than the facade that addiction will do, you know, will take us what directions it will take us into. And so now I know I have a purpose in life, and I no longer have to be that homeless guy that's walking the streets aimless and hopeless. And I get to actually, you know, transmit that to other people that I meet in the process of recovery, that will allow me to work with them and help them. And so what else do I do to help people get recovery? In 2020, I created, so Austin and I used to have a podcast before when we worked at a treatment center. It was called The Sober Grind, and we would interact together a lot. We'd bring certain guests on here and there, but there was a lot of, because Austin isn't himself an addict or an alcoholic in recovery, he was more of a neutral, as we call them in recovery, a normie. And Austin would ask questions, and then I would answer them. And sometimes we'd have guests on. There was a lot of fun interaction between each other. But in 2020, you know, Austin went on to do something else, obviously some of the work that he's doing right now. And I went on to work with a couple of different companies like Delphi Behavioral Health, and then Resurgence Behavioral Health, and then back to beginnings where I used to work with Austin before for a little while. But all along I kept doing interventions, and it's just basically what I do. I am Pej, I'm the interventionist. That's what I do. Now, Austin helped me start Pej's Recovery Corner. This was actually a Facebook page that I had before. It was just an idea in the mid of 2015, I believe. I thought about having some kind of a show where it would be a recovery-based show, sort of like, you know, like Dr. Drew feel, but you know, more my style and with my types of guests. So we started it in 2020 during the pandemic. We had a lot of time on our hands, and that's what we were doing. It is available on all platforms where podcasts can be found. Also, hold on, once I have a YouTube channel. So also I have a YouTube channel. It is Pej the Interventionist. We have been growing it. Austin and I talk quite regularly, and just making it more accessible to anyone and everyone. There's a lot of people that are on YouTube, obviously looking for some kind of information when it comes to recovery, sober livings, anything that has to do with addiction, mental health, or alcoholism. And then on Instagram, Pej Interventions, Pej_interventions. I guess I wrote that wrong. That is, oh, sorry, drug_intervention. That's my intervention page on Instagram. We've been growing that too. And then I own 2 highly structured sober livings in South Orange County, California, named the Essence House, which is a men's home, and Limitless Journey, which is a women's and LGBTQ home. These are in South Orange County, California. There's a lot of people that come to us from treatment centers, some that were incarcerated, some that were homeless, some that come from money, and some that come from no money at all. Many different people from all walks of life, they come to us, and we're very 12-step based. We want people to be involved in the 12 steps, whether it be AA, NA, any kind of anonymous program, specified towards their past addictions or their past issues. And we have a lot of miracles and people that come through our home. And then also I have a website named pejintervention.com, and that just talks about me as an interventionist. And then, I could mention this too, which is a big deal, I think. So when I was incarcerated in 2002, I was I was suspected for sales and manufacturing methamphetamines in Orange County. And I had an aunt. My mom would come to jail to visit me, but she was so angry that she would stand behind the plexiglass and she wouldn't talk. But my aunt, who was from out your way, or out some of your ways, from Maryland, she would come and do all the talking for her. And she would often look at me crying in the cell in my orange jumpsuit and say, "I just hope you get better. I just hope you get better, Peggy." And then eventually when I got sober at the age of 35, 36 years old, my aunt would often tell me that we should start some kind of a nonprofit organization that she could educate people out on the East Coast, kind of more closer to Montgomery County. And so she created this organization. It's a nonprofit. We named it together. It's called Arise and Flourish. What she started doing is finding people that were addicts and alcoholics that had changed their lives in that local area. And she started going into junior high schools and high schools, and they would go in and they would tell their stories, and then they would do an educational piece where it talks about the cycle of addiction, the way it starts, and what an addict's brain functions as. And so when she first started this organization, I went out and got to speak in a couple of schools just to help assist her to get it started. And then afterwards, she grew it in about 5 or 6 years' time to about 44 volunteers that would come and tell their stories about addiction, alcoholism, mental health, and it's still on and going. Arise and Flourish, that's out your way. So I think we will now get to the questions portion. Anybody have any questions?
I can jump in here. Luke, if you have a...
No, I was just going to let people gather and collect their thoughts and thank Pej for this. It always inspires me and impresses me, people that are able to speak about their own recovery and their own sobriety, because it's obviously an incredibly challenging and personal experience. So the fact that you're able to turn your experience into a gift to the world is an absolute incredible thing, and I thank you for that.
Thank you too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pej. Always so inspiring to hear your story. If you don't know, I have a question. I have a little bit of a background for you. So Rotary is an organization of 1.4 million people worldwide. We're a worldwide organization. If you don't know, we've basically collectively ended polio throughout the world by having this singular vision of focus and fundraising and boots on the ground approach. Now, polio is almost eradicated, 99.9%. I think we're in double-digit cases throughout the world now. Now, I was in Houston a couple of months ago at the Rotary International Conference, And there was quite a few panels as well as booths throughout that panel of what should the next approach be when for Rotary when we finally completely 100% eradicate polio. And there was a lot of conversation and chatter about substance abuse and drug and alcohol addiction, because this is a worldwide struggle as well. Now, addiction starts at a community level and at an individual level. So really my question is, I'd love to hear your thoughts on from a community level, maybe us as a club or just communities in general, what can we do to help aid in the battle against drug and alcohol addiction?
I mean, if you guys were able to help stop polio, then obviously there's a major epidemic going on with addiction, more so than ever. Obviously, addiction's been around for centuries, but with this whole fentanyl craze and crisis, we need to educate people. We need to definitely get out there and spread the word. This isn't going to go away. It's going to get worse and worse. Therefore, people that are in recovery, or even if we have a voice through the Rotary organization, we want to help. We want to save lives, because too many lives are going to fall, as they are in my world on a daily basis. I mean, we almost hear about somebody overdosing and dying so more often, like every day, at least every day or every other day. So whatever it would take, I wish that we could just expand our voices. And however, I mean, I didn't even know about this whole Rotary Club until you told me about it, Austin, but it's quite interesting. And you've put an idea in my mind. So however we raise awareness, that would be great.
Thank you.
Awesome. I see that Carson and then Gaston both have their hands up. So Carson, would you like to?
Yes, thank you. And sorry to be off camera. I'm on sort of a slow Wi-Fi connection. But thank you so much for your presentation and for all you do. This is just incredible and so moving and so hopeful. Ours, like every community, of course, is impacted by addiction. And I guess I have sort of two parts to this question. One is sort of broad and systemic, and one's very local to what we do. Systemically, is there anything we can do to advocate for people who are experiencing substance use disorders, but who are also incarcerated, whether they be youth or adults? It strikes me that, I don't know if that's a member of talking to our city council or something, but it strikes me that can't possibly be really helpful for people's recovery, but maybe I'm wrong. And then also, what can we do more on the ground locally? Like in the neighborhood that our club is associated with, I know there are a couple of really great, centers that have meetings and the like, but I also understand that it's not appropriate for us to just show up and say, hey, give us something to do. So I guess I'm wondering, both at the macro level and micro level, are there things we could be doing as individuals and as a club?
I think those are great questions. I do have a lot of friends that are in the recovery community that are strong members of recovery, that represent, they are a voice for us, and they're going to Washington and they are speaking with lobbyists. They're definitely working on many, many different ways of being able to educate and put certain types of, build certain laws and be able to get the word out that this has become, it's really becoming bad, and that something needs to be done. Sometimes it's spoken among some of our friends. They say, is it going to take for senators or for even higher levels of people that are in office for their kids to be affected by this before somebody actually puts their foot down? And I think that's already happening. So yes, most definitely. Could you repeat your second question again?
Sure. I was wondering if there were things we could do locally, or like leaders you would recommend reaching out to. For instance, in the neighborhood associated with our club, the DuPont Circle area, there are, as I'm sure every neighborhood has, a couple of great places for meetings, like for 12-step meetings and the like. And I don't know if volunteer services are ever needed. I know that the meetings themselves are intended to be private, but I don't know if those kind of facilities ever need any kind of volunteer help, whether that be anything from, painting walls to who knows. Just trying to think of things we could actively do locally to support people who are in recovery in our community.
Great. I love that question. You've got the wheels in my head spinning. Absolutely. I love the idea of painting walls, but even more than that, I believe if you put on some town halls or bring together community member, different people, all different types of people. In your local area, I know of a gentleman named Kirk Knight, I believe that's his name. His son overdosed and died a few years back. So he created an organization. I think if you get a lot more people that have had experience that have overcome the addiction, or even parents that have lost their loved ones, to come together and create some kind of an organization where more people can see that this is a reality and that it's happening in their neighborhood. It could be happening in your backyard. It could be happening in your yard. You know, everybody, I think, in America has someone or knows someone that's suffering with addiction, alcoholism, or mental health. I believe it that we're there now. So we want to spread the word and raise awareness, whether we have to paint it on a wall or talk about it on some radio show or create more recovery podcasts. But it needs to be known that A, the problem is out there, and B, there are solutions to these problems. And as long as we're more vocal about it, I mean, come on, this is great that you guys were able to put a stop to polio. I mean, that's great. Well, it's wonderful, right? So if it could be with a disease like that, then why not with addiction? At least we could get in front of it. You know, I often say this: the cartels are doing their job, and they're going to hit every single state just like they're doing. I have clients from every single state that come into treatment. Maine, Delaware, all of the states you never really hear of much action. That there's a lot of drugs there probably for that main reason. But the cartels are doing their part. They're distributing the drugs. So we want to put an end to it, at least get people to know what they're doing to themselves. There's a book called Fentanyl Inc. that I really think every person in the United States should read, and to see like where it started, why it became so popularized, why it's not going away, and who's doing what, and how many people are just a number to their game.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Gaston, mate.
Yeah, hi, Pej. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I don't really have a question, but just wanted to give you thanks because I myself am approaching 2 years of sobriety, and I think I, listen to a lot of thank you podcasts on sobriety. So it's very possible I might have listened to yours at some point. There's actually a lot of podcasts on that. I was really surprised, but I really found it very helpful. Just listening to other people's stories, and so I just wanted to thank you for your openness, and I hope to reach 15 years as well. So cheers.
Good job on 2 years. I love that so much.
Yeah, that's incredible. I got to be honest, when Austin first recommended you to be a speaker, I thought to myself, well, what's Pej going to talk to us about? And then I realized the most important thing is information, is bringing a somewhat taboo or perhaps personal issue into the light. Because as you say, every person probably has someone immediately in their orbit right now that's struggling with these challenges. So I think that was so important for you to come and speak today, because I know there was probably someone here today that's going to take this message with them to someone that really needs to hear it. And it didn't take me long to even think about how substances affected my life and my family, and really grateful for you. You're a unique speaker to this club, but we're definitely going to be having you back, so we're not going to be losing your number, and I know you'll be a great resource for all of us. So thank you, Pej.
Thank you, Luke. What a privilege.